Welcome to A Sex Worker's Guide to the Galaxy, where the answer to life, the universe, and everything is sex workers. I'm your host, Parker Westwood, and today I am bringing to you an interview I'm super excited about. I feel like I say that about every single interview because it's true, but this time I get to share with you a very dear friend of mine. You'll gather from the interview that we've been friends for a very long time and have influenced each other's journey in sex work quite a bit. I'm talking about Lena Czura, one of my very good friends in this industry. And we tried to do an hour-long interview and failed epically. It turned into a 2.5-hour, wildly wonderful conversation, and it was vulnerable and beautiful. And so we're doing another 2-part episode, and I'm filling the month of June with Lena Czura, and I'm just going to say you're welcome in advance. I figured this was pretty appropriate as it is her birthday month, and it's also Pride. So we talk about Lena's journey in sex work, how she got to where she is now. We talk about organizing specifically for the decriminalization and destigmatization of sex work. We talk about being anti-racist in that particular movement, but also just in general, being an anti-racist white person in the fight for the end of white supremacy. And also identifying internalized power structures. There's so much in this, and we go on tangents because you put a Gemini and a Libra in a closet, and this is what happens. So I'm just really excited to bring this to you, and happy Pride Month. I'm going to take this opportunity to remind everyone listening that the first Pride was a protest, and that we are still very much so in the fight for Black and brown trans sex workers' rights. And it's a fight that's very near and dear to my heart. And we're not free until we're all free. So we got a lot of work to do. But I'm glad you're in it with me. I'm glad that we're all in this together, because we can't do it unless we stick together. So here is the first half of my conversation with Lena Czura. I hope you enjoy it. Let's jump in. Here we go. Okay, we're here with the one, the only, my best sex worker friend. I can't say you're my best friend or that I'm your best friend 100%. Because your best friend will come for me.
That's true. And your best friend is your best friend territory. Yeah. Don't fuck with Capricorns.
No.
Don't fuck with Capricorns and Sagittarius.
Do not. But my best sex worker friend, Lena Czura.
Hi.
We're also in person, so prepare for the giggles.
Yeah, and the ambient noise, because I'm gonna fidget. I'm gonna play with my hair throughout this.
Yes.
And I will take a sip of my La Croix from time to time.
The only La Croix.
The only La Croix.
Also, La Croix, if you want to sponsor this episode.
we just name dropped you hard. Sell these bitches.
Sell it. So, take a moment, as in tradition of this podcast, to introduce yourself. Pronouns, what kind of sex work you do, where you're based, all the things you'd like to identify as.
Hi, I'm Lena Czura, and welcome to my closet. We are currently set up in my closet right now.
Yes.
My closet is in what is known as occupied Anishinaabe Ojibwe territory, and to some other people in iterations of society, Detroit, Michigan. I am from here. I am a sex worker, content creator, memories curator.
Yes.
Yeah. Professional travel companion that works on the coasts. So LA and New York.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So good. So comprehensive.
So comprehensive. Oh, and my pronouns. Yeah.
There we go.
My pronouns when I'm working are she. My pronouns when I'm not working are she and they. And I think that's an important distinction to make at this point in my gender journey.
Agreed.
Ah! Yeah. Yeah, it feels good.
So how did you get started in sex work?
I got started in sex work. I've been Lena now for 3 years. 3 years this month. Hey. Happy Pride Month. Happy Lena-versary.
Yes.
Hey. And it feels really good. Before I was Lena, I had been a pro-dom. Super low-key. I was a super low-key pro-dom. Never had pro-dom is a professional dominatrix, because for all of the listeners who have listened to your podcast, you've had a number of pro-doms that I have been so enamored with, so fucking enamored with.
You and me both. All of them.
I was never that cool. I was never as cool as Master Joshua, as Olivia Black, as Pinky Bjorn. I was never as cool as any of these bitches.
It's hard to compete with those three.
Yeah. Comparison is the enemy, and also, like, I revere them. So I was a pro-dom. I got introduced into pro-doming from my ex-girlfriend when I was in my 20s. She had been a pro-dom, and she got me into kink stuff, and I loved it. And she had always said, like, she was like, how did she say it? She was like, clients would be dying to be like a sub for you. And I was like, what a weird, like, when she said that, and I was like a mid-20s person, and I was like, what the literal fuck are you talking about? That was something that always stuck with me. So, so she introduced me to that world. And after we broke up, I got involved in the lifestyle community, and lifestyle community people kept saying the same thing. They were like, oh, you'd be great as a pro dom. And I was like, that is so funny. That is not the first time I've heard that. And that was a lot of fun. I did that for, I don't even know if I did it for a year, like right about a year. Yeah. And loved it, but I couldn't maintain it with the job that I was doing, the career that I had, and everything that sex work demands of us. So that was my first time actually applying sex work. I credit you as the first person that ever talked to me about sex work, because even before that, when I was in my early 20s, and you and I were in a training together, and we had to name, this was when we were both involved in policy work and community organizing, and we each had to name a person in the public sphere that we admired. Yes. And I remember being in this room with you before we really knew each other. Yeah. And you were like, person in the room that I admire, and you were like, Annie Sprinkle, and I was like, who the fuck is Annie Sprinkle? And like, even the person in the training room at the time was like, who the fuck is Annie Sprinkle? And you were like, Annie Sprinkle is a sex worker, advocate, activist, organizer. They are all about like sex worker rights and da-da-da. And I was like, what is this bitch doing talking about sex work? Like, what is sex work? And that was and you were talking about unionizing strippers. Yep. You were all on about unionizing strippers. And I was like, who? Like, who? What? And that was I had no idea that sex work was a term. I knew what strippers were, but I had such a super classist, horophobic orientation towards sex workers and strippers in that as like the most visible component of that. And And we've gone down the rabbit hole ever since. And here we are.
Alternately encouraging one another.
Alternately encouraging one another to join the greatest journey in profession and community in the world.
Oh, it's been so good.
Thanks.
I love that origin story.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you and I, we met doing community organizing and policy work.
Yeah.
That is a huge part of your life and your story, since before sex work.
Yeah.
So what about community organizing is important to you?
Dude, when you sent me these questions earlier today and I saw that, this is the only question. No, that's a lie. This was the first question that I read on the page that I was like, bitch, what the fuck?
I don't make this easy.
You don't make it easy. You don't make it easy. Yeah, so I meditated with this one today on my couch, and community organizing is important to me. So I feel like there's a lot of ways that the world that we live in right now, the way that our society is structured, by race, by class, by gender orientation, by religious persecution, that's not even religious affiliation, like straight up persecution, that inflicts on my ability to be the fullest, greatest human that I'm capable of being on this earth. And I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with that. And yeah, so I think about this concept of, have you ever read the book The Body Is Not an Apology?
Yes.
Sonia Renee Taylor. Hey.
If you haven't read it, listeners, please purchase a copy. Give Sonia Renee Taylor your money.
Purchase it from your local bookstore.
Yes.
God damn it. We're not dropping an Amazon link.
Absolutely not.
Go source it from your local bookstore, and it better be POC owned, women owned, queer owned, okay? If it's not, I will send you one from our lovely store here
It'll
in Detroit.
be linked in the show notes, and it will not be an Amazon link.
Thanks. Okay, we can do that too. I was like, they don't get a link. They don't get a link at all.
We're not making this easy for you either.
Scavenger hunt. So the concept that Sonia Renee Taylor presents in this book is like each of us have an innate destined path on this earth, and the sooner and more earnestly that we actually prune away the things in our lives, internally, in our relationships in our life and on a bigger societal structure, the more that we prune away the things that are deviating us from our path of our humanity, then the more we get to live in the joy of what we're destined to be here to do. So that community organizing, where I'm in a community with people where we are actively challenging the systems of oppression, and for me as a white person is challenging the system of internalized supremacy that I have is supremacy fucks with me too. Supremacy has ripped away my ancestral spirituality and replaced it with American imperialism and materialism. And I'm not okay with that. So that shit's gotta go. I have to reclaim 100%. my own identity and what it means for me. That's not this void of whiteness and this void of dehumanizing other people in order to validate myself. That rips me away from my spirituality and my identity. And then that is baseline. That's baseline.
Yeah.
/ it's way more fun to be in community when we're actively loving each other from a place of deep reclamation of identity. That's where the magic is. If
Absolutely.
we're not doing that, we're just fucking around.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm not here to fuck around.
And not fucking around in a fun way.
There's and it's not consensual, it's not cute, it's not fun.
Exactly.
No one gets off.
Yeah, these made up hierarchies get created, and
it's bullshit.
Yeah, it's bullshit.
So my community organizing has always been based in anti-racism work, and was first when we were first working on economic equity.
Heyo.
We were first working on issues of economic equity, and then I got into prison abolition work, and that is how I also was like an immigration work, having like a path for immigration, and also borders are bullshit.
Borders are absolute bullshit.
Yeah, so prison abolition, border abolition, and sex worker rights, decriminalization, and harm reduction.
Way to lead me into the next question.
Bitch.
When did you first start dreaming about organizing sex workers? Or with sex workers?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Because I don't know if the answer is super profound. It sure as hell wasn't when you were dreaming about it. You were dreaming about this way before I was.
Well, I started dreaming about this when I was like 18, 19.
You also like were conscious of wanting to like be a stripper when you were like
6 years old.
Okay, there you go. I didn't want to put it out on you, but I knew it was really
young.
And so so I feel like, so you fucking planted the seed. When I became Lena, in June of 2018, I feel like we started talking about it like pretty much right away. Like there was never a point where I was going to leave my career as a community organizer and stop organizing. Like, no, I'm just gonna like not get paid for it, because like that's not a healthy space for me to be in. It's not a healthy space for me to get compensated to do that community labor. It like conflates a lot of things in my brain of priorities and what grants want from me, and foundations and all this other shit, where I'm like, I'm tight.
Yeah, it gets messy.
It gets real messy. So when I left my job, actually one of the first things I did was sent an email to Swap Michigan, because this was in April of 2018, right after FOSTA SESTA had been implemented. And I was like, and I got inklings of FOSTA SESTA. I was always like sex worker fangirl. I was like following all these accounts on Instagram, on my personal Instagram. And it was like a lot of strippers, because I've always been, spoiler alert, I'm the biggest stripper fangirl ever. And so I was following a lot of dancer accounts. I was following like a couple other like known sex worker accounts on social media. So I'd heard from my prison abolition work that this shit was popping off, that like FOSTA SESTA was coming, and it was like this fucking like slow moving train that no one could stop.
Yep.
And so when I was clear that I was leaving my last job, one of the first emails that I sent was Swap Michigan, and I was like, hey, I come from this policy background. I have been in and out of sex work before. I understand this is a really important moment. Like, what support do you need? Like, I'm happy to, I'm happy to help. What do you need? And they were like, we have a brunch coming up. Like, come to this brunch. And I was like, okay. And I did, and that's when I met a whole bunch of other full service companions. And they were like, oh, are you thinking about being a sex worker again? And I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to be a stripper. And they were like, okay, or you could just be a full service companion. And I was like, oh my God, you're right. I could totally just do that. And so we did a little bit of talking about FOSTA SESTA, and the rest about starting a business. And that was my like branch into the community, but also recognizing that there wasn't a lot that we could do at that point, in that particular like iteration of time and space. And so pretty much right after that is when I started talking to you. Remember, we would like just draw these giant like mind maps of like all of your collective wisdom, all of my collective wisdom, all of the questions that we had, all of the people that...
And I hadn't even started as Parker yet.
You hadn't even been Parker yet. This is when I was I was like, whenever I like had a space that I was hosting from, you would like come over and we would like roll out this scroll of paper and be like, what's happening right now?
I still have some of those.
Oh, yeah. Keep them.
I'm keeping them.
Keep them forever. Oh my gosh. So that was, I mean, it was in tandem. It was in tandem with Lena.
Yeah, because I was working on my website while we were doing that, because I remember I hadn't launched. Yeah.
Yeah, you launched, because I launched in June, you launched in September.
Yeah. Yeah, both our birthday months.
Both our birthday months. It's great. Yeah. Does that answer that question?
I think so.
It was super circuitous.
Yeah, but I think I sense, and I hope the listeners sense, that there's just like a slow build of like how it came about. That sex worker organizing came into your
it was
your psyche.
I think it was a slow build, and it was always there in some capacity.
Right. Like, well, and if you're working with like organizing on economic justice and prison abolition and then borders, like you're gonna run into sex work in every single one of those.
Hello.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Oh my god. Yeah, and yeah, I think that's 100% right.
Yeah, which leads into the next question a bit. Why is decriminalization important, especially in the context of what we were just talking about with like borders and prison abolition and all of these things? Like what would the decriminalization of sex workers like bring to the table?
Revolution. Shit, I mean, I don't like it.
It's really all we want.
Well, I mean, I fundamentally believe that sex work is putting a monetary value on the emotional labor that fuels capitalism. Like when we put that's why it's so fucking stigmatized. Like that is why we are so fucking stigmatized, because God forbid a group of people, whether that is femme-identified people, whether that is young people, whether that is like whoever is on the spectrum, of people whose emotional labor is necessary in order to fuel capitalism, and that's like so invisibilized, and so completely taken for granted, that the moment that we as a collective say like we are valued and our value is like intangible, and we can never truly monetize how much like the fuck we run this shit.
Yes.
But if we had to, but like since we're here,
ballpark number.
But like ballpark number, since we need to like eat and pay rent.
Yes.
Then like this is what that looks like. People have a lot of fucking feelings about it. Yeah, because the shit is so deep. It like starts to take out the underpinnings of racial capitalism as we know it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I think that's so well put. I have a thought around also how sex has been used in warfare, like specifically rape, right?
Yeah.
And so like to monetize sex and like our emotional labor and our sexual beings is essentially a form of taking that power back and taking the power away from the oppressor, or the people who are using that to gain power over.
100%. I mean, I would warfare the creation of this nation.
100%. Yeah.
Like, hello, genocide. Like, the list could keep going.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things at play around like why the decriminalization of sex work is such a sticking point. Yeah. Politically.
Yeah, and I'll add, this is an aside.
Yeah, and we're gonna
and here's our first aside.
2 air signs in a closet.
2 air signs in a closet trying to do a podcast in an hour.
I'm actually proud we haven't had an aside yet.
Joke's on you, bitches. Okay. So I am trying to remember what my aside is. Oh, so this is just like my own personal journey with as an organizer and as an organizer and a sex worker in the movement to decriminalize sex work. One thing that I have learned so much from our peers, and especially honestly like Z St. James, like like holy shit. 1, their podcast was fantastic. 2, I learned so much from them. Constantly is is like the place where my my own shadow of like my blind spot of my own like internalized classism is just like how fucking crucial it is for us to be working in tandem for decriminalization, destigmatization, and harm reduction.
Yes.
Like I, as a sex worker, particularly like how I perform my Lena brand, how I've crafted my Lena brand is very like, it's like very like stabled and empowered and like 100% like if I don't want to fuck with you, I'm really not gonna fuck with you. Like there are a lot of fucking like gatekeepy shit to get through to at least even get to my phone that you can text me to, and I probably won't even text you back. Like even at that point.
Yeah.
If anybody is listening that has experienced this before, it's fucking true. And like there's so many, I mean, right, we're talking like, I mean, a couple million. We're talking hundreds of thousands of sex workers who are in so many different places with sex work. And when we build with Answer, and our cornerstone with Answer is that everybody deserves the right to choose to do this work on their own terms at any given moment. And like that, even sometimes in that space, that vacillates for people. And that like the proximity to sex work and access to safe drug use, to safe substance consumption, to a safe place to live, to like a safe place to care for one's children, like that shit does not intersect with my brand. That shit does not intersect with the way that I experience this work. And I had like, I'm just like as an organizer, I'm like, yeah, super important, harm reduction, blah blah blah, but I never wanted to like be fucking fierce about it.
Right.
Until we started organizing as Answer, and like just how much this shit kept coming up, and I was like, fuck dude, this has been my this has been my blind spot. This is my classist bullshit. Like this is my classist bullshit coming out. And and it's just like I'm just humbled.
Yeah.
I am just humbled.
In this work, it's like there's constant moments where you can be humbled, and I think it's important to choose to be humbled. Like to choose to look at yourself and recognize your blind spots. Not everybody does that, right? And that's but in this work it's so important to do, especially as white folks and like 100%. People of privilege.
100%.
Yeah.
I wasn't just nodding emphatically. Like, I know there's like no camera, but I'm just like, yes, keep going.
Also, before we move on from that,
move on.
Tell our listeners what is Answer.
Oh my gosh, have we talked about? Well, the podcast has heard about Answer before.
Yes.
But let me tell you again, because you bitches need to know. Answer is a network of sex workers to excite revolution. That's an organization that we have been a part of building, that we've been at the genesis of, alongside Z and alongside some really fucking amazing people here in Detroit. And that's the cornerstone of our work is decriminalization and destigmatization. The belief that we as sex workers, every single one of us, deserves to choose to do this work on their own terms. And like there is no right way to survive capitalism.
Heyo.
There is no right way to survive capitalism. So get it how you get it. And like and
there's no shame in our game.
And be able to survive, but B, feel embodied.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Feel embodied in the process. And that's a tall fucking order in this supremacist, capitalist, bitch-ass system.
100%.
So we have a lot of work ahead of us.
There's a lot of work to do in a lot of different areas. One of the things we wanted to cover on this podcast is your identification as anti-racist. And it's a thing that I've wanted to talk about on the podcast as well. And you're just the perfect person to do it with. So, what does it mean?
Questionable side eye.
I'm so here for it. What does it mean for you to identify as anti-racist, and what does that look like for you?
I love how I read this question and I was like, oh, it's going to be so easy to answer. Not easy, but I'm just like, yes, I'm so excited to answer it. And now we're here and I'm like, oh, God. And my oh, God is coming from a place of wanting to sound like the perfect anti-racist white person in this one moment.
Identify that. Yes.
And perfectionism is a fucking fallacy. And is a block of intimacy, and it's also a pillar of supremacy. So I just have to ground myself in that for a moment.
Yeah, if you're not fucking up every once in a while, you're not doing it right.
Oh my God, and you're not human.
No. Humans mess up.
And whiteness likes us to believe that we aren't actually that human. Because if we were, we wouldn't be judging other humans for being fucking human.
That part.
Oh, what a void. Hey, we pulled the void card.
We did.
God bless.
We pulled some tarot before recording.
Yeah.
Another side.
Yeah, and one of the cards was the void. So I identify as white American. My ancestral lineage is Slavic and Eastern European, and also Welsh. I know. The Welsh doesn't come much into my Lena brand because I went heavy. I went heavy on the Slavic roots.
Yes.
With my my Czura last name is a last name from my family's lineage. So I mean, P.S. and by the way, like that was an intentional move. Like I wanted to bring ancestry into my brand, because I feel like when I started in sex work, I saw a lot of white identifying, or at least white passing to me. Like they came up on my radar as like my whiteness radar, and I was like, "Ooh, yes, you are white." No matter who knows how they actually identify.
Right.
I saw a lot of presumably white companions like engaging with a lot of appropriative branding stuff.
Yeah.
Like I was just like, ooh, I'm like seeing a lot of like bindis and headdresses and like real intentional exotification, because exotification is sexy. Like we literally call stripping exotic dancing. And the only way that we know how to exotify our bodies as white folks is to like actually make them less white. Like historically we've been doing that for a really long fucking time. Like hello, the creation of high heels. Right. For us to like wear them to like have a figure that we deemed was the figure of black women, because black women were being fucking exotified and fetishized by the white men that we were like trying to act like we wanted to be in relationship with because someone told us that was important. Right. Like, holy shit. Oh my God, we've all been so duped, you guys.
Survival. In a lot of ways.
Survival, yeah. And so bringing it back to being an anti-racist white person in life, why that's important to me. Is that right? Is that the question? I think it's a lot about what I was mentioning before. Is like I feel like a lot of us who are in social justice work, who identify as social justice movement people, I hear a lot of us be like, I'm an anti-racist white person because there are people of color in my life who I love, and like I don't want to be I don't want to think of anybody else who's not white as less than. And I'm like, yes, yes, and yes, and yes, and like, what's at stake for me? Yes. What's at stake for me is that like supremacy fucking tears my soul apart. Yeah. Like if I'm not naming the fact that like supremacy actually dehumanizes my insides, there is no way that I can show up for my like brothers, sisters, siblings that are people of color, whatever, however you identify, gender, race, religion. There's no way for me to show up in this conversation unless I've actually claimed how like my humanity is also like with me. So supremacy fucks with me. Like I said before, it tears me away from my ancestors and my ancestral lineage, and it's fucking alive even like right here in Detroit. Like so I'm a 4th generation Detroiter, asterisk, because white flight is real, and the generation before me all grew up here, and left Detroit because they could, and Detroit historically being a very Black American city, my relatives didn't want to be here, and like so many white families like up and left, and still like have this relationship with Detroit, but not one of like having been a resilient member of the community through generations, but like the proximity of like we'll claim it when it's convenient, but like we won't be here when the shit goes bad.
So much of that.
Yeah. One of my family members of the generation above me has one of those mugs that's like, bitch please, I'm from Detroit.
Oh my god.
And it just like it makes me feel so much confusion, anger, shame. What I'm like rolling my eyes in the back of my head and holding my hair because I'm just like trying to identify. I'm like, where's my humanity in this? Because my family has done this. It's like we have been a part of this city for a long ass time, you know, for like 200 whatever years. And wait, I didn't do that math right. Math is relative. Time is relative in this moment. Generations aren't like necessarily 100 years, but we'll say 100, 150 years, something like that. So I have this picture of so this picture is part of a longer text that I have from a course. It was like kind of like a cohort. Did I ever tell you about this course that I did with this organization called White Awake?
You did, because I took a course with them after you told me
about
it.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. We've been friends for a really long time.
We have.
I don't know everything we've talked about. Like reclamation of ancestry as part of white folks in the social justice movement, because it's a really good place to be in when we're white folks in the social justice movement. Yeah,
I just want to speak to the part of like making it personal. Like you were saying, like I need to know what it is in for me because it's, you have to feel it in your core. You have to have skin in the game.
Because the risk if we don't do that is me. I do this. If I don't do that, I show up as a paternalistic, do-good white woman. I am pink pussy hat circa 2019 wearing, like, peace and love. I just want everyone to be happy. Like,
yes.
And when I show up, like, I just really, like, care all about my, like, friends who are black and brown. And, then, like, it's not even a rabbit hole. It's a short, little, tiny chipmunk hole.
Yeah.
To me, being, like, paternalistic-y, do-goody, performative-ass bullshit.
Yep. Can I just say, just because it struck me just now, that is, like, people-pleasing and fear of conflict, like, showing up in social justice movements.
Those are my two favorite things to do when I don't want to feel my feelings.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense.
It makes so much sense.
I am the biggest people-pleaser ever.
Yeah.
And I hate conflict.
Yeah. And in order to do real anti-racist work, we have to choose conflict sometimes.
We have to choose to be uncomfortable. We have to choose to be in conflict, and we have to choose to live in discomfort.
Yes.
And to live with less resources.
Yes.
That makes me wildly uncomfortable. And for, like, I think it's like like people pleasing and fear of conflict are two coping mechanisms from my own like family structure and my own story in life that is completely underpinned by what is acceptable in white identity. It is incredibly acceptable for me as a white woman to be exceptionally people pleasing. Like, hello.
I relate to that so hard.
And it is really, really like white girl code. Hello, white girl code 101. Like, let me just tell one.
Yeah,
on
reveal
us.
the secret.
it's like we don't get in conflict. Like we don't get in conflict. That's why there's so many other fucking stereotypes about literally every other identity group that is non-white being like whatever just conflict oriented in some way or antagonistic in some way. Like, I mean, I've like just hello.
Yeah, and I think too there's the trope of like, well, the white girl trope of being gossipy, like behind someone's back. We don't
so true.
We don't do the direct conflict. But we
gossip.
gossip.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Thanks for you're right. Direct conflict.
Yeah.
Direct conflict. You were 100% right, dude. We were talking about anti-racism stuff, something about ancestral stuff.
There was a thing
more about because if we're not, then we risk being paternalistic, do-goody white women. I've done that for a long time. That still fucking creeps up, dude.
Yep.
That still fucking creeps up.
It's important to know it so you can
name it to tame it.
Yes,
and
name it to tame it.
Oh yeah,
I've not heard that.
What?
That's good.
You're welcome. You are welcome. Well, name it to tame it, and be ready to do the repair work when it does. Yeah. You know, the repair work can show up differently, and
Oh, we're creeping so close into the next thing, but I did want to touch on one more thing around anti-racism.
Wait, what else? What was the actual question?
The actual one was like, what does it mean for you to be anti-racist?
Oh, well, it's my entire life.
Yeah. And then the thing I want to touch on before we move on to the next bit is like, how is anti-racism? What?
I didn't get to finish my story.
Finish your story.
Detroit and stuff. Okay.
Yes.
But then that was a really good question.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want me to finish the story?
Finish the story, and then we'll go into the next one.
A Libra and a Gemini do a podcast, and it's absolutely perfect.
We walk into a bar, and then we walk straight out of it.
Because what the fuck are we going to do in a bar?
Right. I love you.
I love you so much. Oh, okay. This is going great. A big part of my anti-racism work and my therefore ancestral work as a white person is and it's not just about like claiming my ancestry. It's also grieving the loss of my ancestral identity and the way that it has been systematically replaced with this like ubiquitous thing that we just call white.
Yeah. Which is made up, by the way.
Which is a complete social construct. And that, like, doing that grief work, like fucking grieving what I have lost, is also what allows me to like be more of a human in my relationships.
Yes.
With myself, with people that I love, and in the community that I am accountable to. And one of the things like that I was talking about here in Detroit, that was a picture that I got from from the White Awake group.
Yes.
Was Hamtramck, Michigan. So if you all are not familiar with the glorious city of Detroit, Hamtramck is a city within a city. It's 2 square miles of its own city surrounded by Detroit. It's like a little bit of like, it's like north and east of where we are right now, but if you look it up on a map, it's also like pretty well known. And Hamtramck was historically known as being like the like Polish Catholic stronghold of Detroit. And like the Pope visited once. It was a really big deal. Now we have like a statue of the Pope. Whenever I talk about being Polish from Detroit, people are like, oh, Hamtramck. And I'm like, yes, like a couple generations ago, that would make sense for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's not my lineage. My lineage is on the west side of the city. But all that to say, there's this picture from 1929 at the General Motors company. So it was like General Motors Company factory where they're making all the fucking cars in Hamtramck, Michigan. And it was a snapshot of the graduation ceremony of what is called the Americanization program.
Whoa.
Bitch, we can Google this and this is real.
Whoa.
The Americanization program. So the Americanization program was a compulsory program for any immigrant coming over, predominantly from what we now identify as like fellow white people countries.
Right.
So Poland, Ukraine, like
Norway,
Macedonia, right. Wherever, like keep going.
Yeah.
And it was predominantly Eastern European at the time. Where like folks would come, they would learn like the important English that they would need to know to work in the factories, and they would learn, more importantly, like the cultural nuances of how to behave. This is how to behave, taught by the corporation that is General Motors. So like General Motors is doing this whole thing like, here's how you behave in this space and in your new home. Here's what you sound like. Here's what to do. Here's what to not do. Oof. And the graduation ceremony was literally, I kid you fucking not, was literally the whole fucking thing was that the person graduating was supposed to, which was like the man of the family. It's not like women were fucking working.
Right.
The person graduating was to take the items that they brought from their home country and all of their cultural garb and bring them and throw them into this pot.
Oh no.
The melting pot, and it gets lit on fire.
Oh.
And it's just like this whole ceremonious thing of this like complete taking of cultural garb and just washing it, like fucking erasing it, and then getting handed an American flag.
Oh my god, that's awful. Like, and the fact that like the company is orchestrating
and this. The corporations, y'all, it's like I can't. Like, when people are like, oh, like, capitalism, racism, like, united, like, which one? It's like both have been so systematically contrived.
100%.
By corporations since day fucking one. Day fucking one. Like, if we, like, no wonder we cannot identify who we are as white people because it was created by some fucking CEO at, well, apparently General Motors, goddammit. Like, that, and when I have that, like, when I have this picture to look at, 1929, the year that my grandma was born.
Wow.
The year that my grandma was actually born, in Detroit, and I see, like, holy shit, this is what my grandma was born into, this is what my mom was born into. Like,
yes.
Now, like, and like, understanding the way that my mom in her lifetime grew up as like a Polak girl at a time when like Polish people like we were like kind of being ushered into the gates of whiteness, like
right
in like the like 50s, 60s, 70s. Like it was a very like slow thing. Like my uncles still get called dumb Polacks,
right? Because it's around the same time Irish folks were being ushered into whiteness.
Just the fucking Catholics. Yeah. Poor Catholics got we came in at the end. Yeah.
Yep.
And it's the same way that we think about like Bosnian folks now, or here in Michigan how we think about like Chaldean folks now, where there's like a deep intrinsic part in our brains where we're just like, and we can't even articulate it, but we're like, oh, I mean, like they're white, but and like the way that I understand my family being in a white butt category in their lifetime, and now I'm in like the white category,
right,
is just like, oh my god, it makes so much sense why we move the way that we move and how we move.
Yes.
The way that we move, and how much has been fucking taken from us.
Yeah, and exposes how much it's a social construct.
Yeah, and how coercive this shit is.
Yeah.
Like, how fucking coercive this shit is. Like, every single one of our identity groups across the board has a coercive relationship with capitalism, has a coercive relationship with racial capitalism. Like, we can't escape it. Like, we cannot escape it. And yeah, so when I touch in on like, ooh, I feel the fire. Ooh, I feel the fire. Like,
we need it.
When I am tapped into the grief, into the rage.
Yes.
I'm ready to fucking link up. I'm ready to link up with fellow white folks. I'm ready to link up with like fellow black, brown, who like people across all spectrums of gender, race, class, who are like, yeah, this is fucked.
Yeah.
Like, when I'm tapped in and centered and grounded, like, I'm ready to show up and be like, I feel my fuckedness. I feel fuckness for you. And like, this shit is not gonna fly.
Yeah.
And so, and I feel like in our iteration, I'm like really with the word iteration today. And how that plays out like now in our lives, like we're living through our like first round of the Black Lives Matter movement was when I was an organizer. Now in our second round of the Black Lives Matter movement as an organizer, it's like, I'm ready to show up because I refuse for this to happen, to continue happening. Like, I refuse for the dehumanization of like my humanity and the humanity of people I love to continue.
Absolutely.
I refuse.
But you've got to get in touch with that fire. And I think I love that you identified that and like where the origin comes from, because I think that's the part of personal anti-racist work that is so key to identifying that piece inside of ourselves that is grief and loss and anger and confusion and like identifying it, leaning into it, and really feeling those things so that we can show up in the anti-racist movement authentically and not in that paternalistic sense that we were talking about earlier.
I definitely identified as anti-racist before being connected to this grief and this rage.
Yeah.
And when I lived in a space of guilt. Like, guilt was my primary motive. Like, I feel guilty for having so much privilege.
That stuff creeps up still.
Therefore, I will be a doormat for whatever person has more melanin than me, tells me what to do. And now I'm in oh my gosh. And I did more harm than good.
Yeah.
I was incredibly harmful in my relationships. And that's I'm still in my repair work with that and like what that fucking looks like, dude. Being tapped into the fire doesn't absolve my relationship to the privilege I have now. It just means that I have the clarity that like I'm not going to try and I'm not going to try to minimize, erase, play down my privileges.
Yes.
Like, I am just so fucking on fire for equity.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck it looks like for every person that I love and am in a relationship with and in accountable community with to have the same accesses to resources that I do.
Yes.
And I get to live, like, my journey now is like living in the discomfort and the recognition that like what that looks like is often being uncomfortable and like often being like in this titrated place between like fire, privilege, discomfort, rage, and like understanding that we deserve these resources. So like, how the fuck are we gonna get them?
Yeah.
Like, how the fuck am I going to like share like mutual aid, share the resources that I have, but not necessarily try and minimize or negate them.
Yeah. And take the risks necessary to show up.
Ooh,
yeah.
ooh.
So with the anti-racist stuff, how does anti-racism work and that identity fit into your sex work and business model. I know, this is going to be a two-parter, I know it.
Oh my god, it's going to be a two-parter. Fuck, dude. I feel the inclination to judge myself really harshly right now.
Mm-hmm.
I feel the inclination to throw myself under the bus.
Mm-hmm. Where is that coming from?
Yeah, that's coming from my own narrative of like being the perfect anti-racist white ally. Means that I would that I would quote unquote be doing more, or that I would quote unquote doing more. I'm like air quoting.
Yeah.
My fingers cracked in the microphone when I air quoted, so you could probably know that I'm air quoting vigorously. I think that's it. I think it's that. Okay, so I name that, and then I still have to answer the question.
Sorry, not sorry.
Rude. God damn it, this is rude. It's been a process. It's been a process. It turns out that there's no handbook or instructions for like how to be an anti-racist white person, and also, and also like a fucking hustler. So
noises of exasperation.
I feel the tension. I feel fucking tension between my identity as an anti-racist white person and my brand as a sex worker. And I have put a lot of intention and time and resources to bring those two things closer together. I feel like when I started, this is also the beauty of why I fucking love Twitter as a platform for like indirect or passive solicitation.
Yeah.
Because I'm like have a platform where I can like share my values and like even just like share my spirit, which is just like I'd like to think is like pretty genuine and compassionate as a person, which is like a really important tenet as an anti-racist white person. Having feelings and like desiring genuine intimacy.
Yes.
Turns out whiteness doesn't like that. And
truth.
Yeah, so the tension that I feel is I don't know. I ask your feedback too.
Yeah.
I'm like ready to go in and be like, fuck, I haven't done enough. I feel like I built the tenets of my brand on being like hot, able-bodied, normal, like normatively beautiful, cisgendered white girl.
Yeah.
And like I can have an immense amount of success by just having those things. Like that's where my privilege fucking like catapults my shit into like I mean like I just have to drastically not fuck up.
I love when you say that. You've said that a few times in my presence, and I really appreciate you identifying like I have all of these privileges as an able-bodied white like normatively attractive woman, and like all I have to do is not fuck up. And it really, I think you are being a little hard on yourself, because go figure. I mean, but I think it's hard because marketing as a sex worker almost requires a certain amount of playing into the tropes and the stereotypes, and like that's why you will see people playing into the fetishization of whatever race they identify as, or they appear to be. Maybe they don't even identify as that, but whatever they appear to be, or trans sex workers like playing into the tropes there.
Yeah.
And so I think marketing as a sex worker is really difficult. And I think for me, at least with when I think about branding, I've had the struggle of trying to bring my anti-racist identity into the way that I advertise and the way that I like post photos, and like really trying not to not to play into the tropes as much as possible, because there's a certain amount of leeway that you can have, and then also making statements on Twitter, on OnlyFans, and really just like identifying things and making people think in ways, like the people who follow you. I've noticed that you tend to put things on OnlyFans, like celebrating, I think it was, on Columbus Day you posted something. Yeah. And you like made a point to like get heated a little bit. And so I think like maybe speak to that, or like bringing that in, taking those risks as part of your brand.
Also, huge shout out to the team of people that help me actually, like, I do not, okay, first and foremost,
there we go.
With branding, I don't do this shit alone. Like, I have a social media manager, I have an OnlyFans manager, I have an assistant that does all of my emails. So like, the beauty of working with this team is that like I am very, like, with them, I'm very fiercely like, this is my brand, this is what we're doing. Like, they know me as like an anti-racist white person. And we vibe on that level, like we super vibe on that level. And okay, so this is helping me. Thank you, because it's like it's like getting me a little bit out of my like shame spiral that I was going in.
I felt it.
I was really in my shame spiral. I was so in my shame spiral.
It's easy to go there. We don't have to go there.
So much compassion.
We've got the high priestess here. No shame spiral.
No shame spiral today. No. Right next to the void.
Yeah, we needed the void.
God bless. Yeah, so it feels like it's it feels like my anti-racist value system has served me in a whole bunch of smaller decisions that in like overarching decisions. Like my first decision was like naming, right? And I remember doing the branding workshop with PS Group, and it was just like, there's like, PS Group has a fabulous...
It's amazing.
PS Group could probably also sponsor this podcast, because I'll probably keep talking about you guys. Has a great branding workshop. It's just like a whole bunch of really thought-provoking questions, and I remember being like, I'm really fucking set on keeping my last name Cesura. And at the beginning, people were like, oh, that's a little confusing, it's a little da-da-da-da-da-da, and I was like, no, I gotta do this, because, like, this is my fucking tether. Like, if I like, go into a more generic name, like, I will be really tempted to continue to evolve in more generic ways, and I can't. I refuse. Like, that is not in line with my values. I can't go into, like, basic bitch land, because, like, I still do basic bitch shit all the time.
Yeah.
Hello. Reclaiming the basic bitchness.
Yes.
And also, like, it comes down to, you know, like, I remember I was abroad doing a photo shoot, and I was in Mexico, and it was gorgeous and amazing. And there was a moment when I was working with the set person and the photographer, and there was we were in this really tiny mountain town in Mexico, and there was a Mexican woman who was like dressed up in traditional Mexican garb of like the mountain town community with the flowers and the gorgeous, and had like a little mule and a cart, and the mule was in the flowers and the cart had the flowers, and it was beautiful. And the set person was like, oh my God, you need to go get a picture with that mule and that woman. And I was like, ooh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I will not do that. Like, that's not of my culture, because that doesn't fit with my brand. But like, that's not of my culture, that's not of my people, and I'm sure as hell not gonna go make money off of this photo with this like wonderful elder brown woman, like, as a prop. The fuck no. The fuck no. Next question.
Yeah.
Like,
thank you, next.
Thank you, next. And like, there's been so many little decisions like that that have been part of my like journey of being a sex worker that have also been that have put me in a place of like being more vocal
Mm-hmm.
about my relationship to organizing, my relationship to sex worker organizing, and being a white person who's anti-racist. And now it's like, now I have clients who like value me for this shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, which is just, and when I was building my website, in the latest website that I have, I was really on about wanting to build a Detroit page. Like, there were so many of us as Detroit companions.
Yes.
But like none of us, it didn't feel like any of us were orienting around the city.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like this really unspoken, like, it, well, I'll just, for whatever it is, I read this, like, my like social justice spidey senses of like, this is some white bullshit happening, of like, like none of us as white companions orient around this black majority city.
Yes.
Because that wouldn't be quote unquote luxury, that wouldn't be quote unquote classy, like this like super tacit equation with race and class, and I'm like, I'm not fucking okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
So I built on my website a page for Detroit that I have off right now because I'm reorganizing it. I need to like update it.
Mm-hmm.
But I was literally just like, if you, I think I was really sassy in my content, but it was something that
you sassy in your content.
What? Who is that? Who could that be? But I was just like, if you have shit to say about Detroit, say it to my face.
Yeah.
Like, fuck you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck, like, no, I mean, love you, clients.
But also don't talk shit about Detroit.
Also, don't talk shit about Detroit.
Yes.
Like, I can't. Like, I'm on a reclamation journey of my own family leaving Detroit, of me now being in, like, full-time in Detroit, being the only home-owning person in the city of Detroit, when at one time we had 7 homes across the city.
Wow.
Like, not even a generation ago, we don't have that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I cannot afford to be, like, in this tacit white girl place of, like, oh, I guess we'll just go hang out in the suburbs for the evening. Like, no. Bitch. Mm-mm. Actually, it costs more money to bring me out to the suburbs.
Yeah.
Like, there's just, like, this whole evolution of decisions for my brand, and now also starting my blog.
Yes. Do you want to take a moment to talk? Okay, we won't
talk about. Okay, no, we can do it.
Okay, I don't care what you want. We're gonna talk about your blog.
I don't want to do it.
So you're starting a blog.
Can you hear me biting my nails?
What? Pray tell, what is your blog about?
Oh, well, it turns out that my blog is about pretty much being a white identifying sex worker in a movement to decriminalize sex work, in how it is my own journey and importance for us to not center our whiteness in the movement to decriminalize sex work.
Hell yeah.
That won't get shit done.
Not at all.
And a whole bunch of other asides. Like, it's not a blog. This is another, yeah. Ooh. So, it was an idea from PS Group. PS Group is just like, when we were doing SEO work, and I think PS Group says this to a lot of folks, like, start a blog. It's great for SEO. Mm-hmm. When you update a blog and you link it to your website, it's the best way to get your, and when we're talking about SEO, we're talking about search engine optimization. Yes. So the way the ranking that your website gets when you are like in an organic Google search. So you get higher up in the ranking, like, you know, in the top results when you have content that's more updated. So a blog is a great place to do that. Super great in theory. And when we talked about it, it was just like, yeah, you know, like, here's a few other examples of like sex worker blogs, and it's just like really stream of conscious, or like really just like super client facing, client talking to, and like you could just kind of do some shit like this and call it a blog. And I'm like, okay, cool, yeah, I could totally do that. Oh shit. Mm-hmm. I can't totally do that. Like, if I'm gonna be in a space where I have my thoughts and values attached to my name and the brand that I have fucking built, like, you best believe it's going to be about, like, movement work.
Yep.
and community organizing. And I can't talk about those things from any other place but my own, which is my forever journey of being a white person in this movement, and a forever journey being a white identified sex worker in our movement to decriminalize sex work. So that means that I started writing a blog, and the drafts are done.
That's exciting.
It's exciting. It's like funny. Honestly, now it'll be interesting by the time we air this podcast, if I have a good sense that it'll be like up and going by then. Oh my God, why did I just give myself that timeline? Who does that? What is this self-accountability? Stop, stop.
I love it.
Oh my God. So, honestly, the question is like, I don't quite know if it'll be linked to my website or if it'll stand alone, which like totally defeats this whole purpose that we were talking about for SEO. But
right.
It's grown outside. It's grown so much bigger than, like, not bigger. It's grown, it's rooted, actually. It's like grown and rooted more in a different place.
Yeah.
So I'm very much leaning towards this blog being hosted on a completely different domain name, like having its own website. Just because the audience of the blog for me, when I'm writing, the audience of the blog is like my peers. Yeah. My peers who are like both white identifying sex workers and not white identifying sex workers. And clients will read that, potential clients can read that, people who are sex worker allies can definitely read it. And that's not necessarily the intended audience. Right. And it doesn't mean that you all won't get something from it. Yeah, and so I think there's a lot of this, like, we as white folks in the larger social justice movement, I think we've done a lot more work in more recent years compared to when I first got started as a white person in the movement, where it's like we were so decentralized because we had so much unprocessed guilt and shame about our whiteness. And there was that delineation of like the good white person versus 100%. Right, yeah, 100%. And now, and we and how much we've done a lot to perpetuate that. Yeah. Which I don't agree with. And by agree with, I mean like I feel it in me the way that I want to demonize fellow white folks who do not have the same values that I have. But I do that from a deep place of superiority complex, as opposed to being able to reach out and be like, ooh, I see the pain that is alive right now. Yeah. And we're actually suffering from the same pain. Yes. We're suffering from the same pain of like being fucking duped by corporations. And we had those in our two ideologies, our dominant narratives have just taken off in two different directions. Yes. And so like if I come back to this place of pain and like recognizing that like we are in the same place of like this like ubiquitousness of whiteness is like telling us that we are different from our peers in some way. Then yeah, and I mean then I can like be in a much deeper compassionate place. That was a total aside. Yeah. The thing that I feel like I want to flesh that out, but I don't want to get too off into the aside. I also feel like that's just a blog post. Like I'm like yeah. Make it a blog post. I'm so excited. I'm just like in this place of like I cannot wait to read your blog. Why? Coming. I'm so God excited. Damn it. Coming soon to an interwebs near you. Thanks for saying that. Yeah, so that's the culmination of anti-racism identity in my sex work life. Absolutely. I also
Deep sigh.
Deep sigh. Deep sigh and more La Croix.
I was also thinking as you were speaking, and earlier when you were like thinking you didn't do enough work, this idea of like prioritizing time to like get out on the fucking streets when shit was going down. Like that was a huge
that was a huge priority.
Yeah, a huge priority.
Yeah.
Like canceling some of your work and stuff in order to, I mean, we both did, in order to like be there and do the work.
You were fucking right.
It's funny how we like don't remember the things that we do.
It's true.
In order to perpetuate a shame spiral, which is not helpful and just keeps us in our coping shit.
In our coping shit, which also like serves the dominant narrative.
100%.
Serves supremacy.
Which is my way of pivoting to...
Stop.
The lady said stop, so we're stopping right there. And I am really grateful that you all are here listening to this. This conversation means so much to me, and I'm still so grateful that Lena was willing to sit down and get vulnerable with me in this way. If you want to help fund our work with Answer, you can go to answerdetroit.org and donate directly there. You can also become a Patreon of this podcast, and 50% of the proceeds go towards a network of sex workers to excite revolution. You can become a Patreon at patreon.com/sexygalaxypod. But if you can't spare the cash at this time, that's totally okay. I'm just really grateful that you're here and you're listening and engaging. If you're feeling like you want to support even further and you don't want to spend any money, you can always leave a review, give us 5 stars. You can engage with us on Twitter at sexygalaxypod. Lena's information is in the show notes, and everything that we talked about, everything that I could possibly find a link to is in the show notes. So go check that out. There's a lot of really good books in there. And stay tuned for the next episode dropping in 2 weeks. That is the other half of this conversation. I am so grateful for you. I don't know how many times I'm going to be able to say that. Probably every single time, multiple times. I feel really lucky always to be creating this podcast. So thank you so much for listening. And happy Pride Month. Stay fabulous. Go out, get covered in glitter or whatever you want to do. It's a really wonderful time to be yourself. Thank you for being you. Okay, space fact. Here we go. Space travel can be rather enjoyable. In fact, when you are floating in space, feeling the euphoria of the vacuous void around you, the pleasure can be so intense that you just come into space, and the result is a Milky Way. Nanu nanu, motherfuckers. Yeah.